suppose what I'm trying to ask is it possible to do it all?
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is, but you need a bit of luck on your side, I think, to have everyone fit and to go the whole way.
Yeah. I mean, the country will go mental if we won the World Cup. We should stop thinking about that, though. We should stop putting pressure on the rugby team to do anything other than enjoy themselves and express themselves. Because ultimately, every time we've said you're a bunch of losers who aren't going to get past the quarterfinals, or else it's like, oh, you're amazing, you're going to win this thing, the same awful thing happens. There's one brilliant performance somewhere along the way that gives us false hope, only for it to come crushing down in a World Cup quarter-final defeat.
Yeah, well, 24 hours ago we were literally glorifying the greatest ad of all time, which pictured Ireland winning the World Cup in football, which is a harder World Cup to win. So I don't think there's anything wrong with us getting carried away and dreaming of us winning the World Cup. I think it's great.
That was not... So no one had ever, in human history, no one had ever said the Irish football team could win the World Cup until about 5 months before that World Cup. We were like, hang on, Duffer is world class, Robbie Keane is scoring amazing goals. We have Roy Keane, he's the best midfielder in the world at the moment, and he's crushing it. What else do you need? The World Cup is actually full of crap teams, especially this World Cup, and it's in Korea and Japan. That means there's no home advantage for anybody. And then the ad came out, and it turns out Jason McAteer had scored a bunch of beautiful goals and been involved in a bunch of beautiful goals, and we were like, hang on a second, we're really good at football. That was the point of that ad.
So you're saying that it's a prolonged pressure on the rugby team?
With the Rugby World Cup, it's always like, we're going out there to win that because we have belief in ourselves. Because over the years, we've kind of beaten all of the teams with the exception of the All Blacks in a game at some point in the 4 years before that. So we're not a million miles away from it.
Well, it's actually a very good point, because you think about Grand Slam year, 2009, think about what happens. You think about the going in and winning the Grand Slam this year. Like, I know it's only 12 months ago, but I'm trying to think what was the mood music around Irish rugby. It certainly wasn't, it wasn't defeatist, but it was like, well, you know, we're probably going to be second best in the Northern Hemisphere to England. England are rocking at the moment. We'll do very, very well to get anywhere near them in the Six Nations. And then this year happens. Like, you do wonder if there's some truth in what you're saying, that every time we do play down the Irish rugby team, they go and surprise us. And every time we build them up, they go and surprise us with being a little bit shit, as they have been on some occasions. If you go back over, say, like, if you go back to, say, 2007, if you go back to 2011, whatever it may be, like, I don't know. I don't think there's any, like, real impact on it. It's just curious that the performances are often way off the mark in terms of how we predict them to go.
Yeah, I don't know what to do.
I think let's get carried away.
I think we should like speak to a bunch of performance analysts and sports psychologists to kind of examine this, because, like, all joking aside, after they choked repeatedly in World Cups, New Zealand went off and did this like massive report, and you can find it on the internet, where they did like proper scientific interviews with everybody who'd been involved down through the years. This is all under Graham Henry, and like, the stuff that they learned from that was that the players have a tendency to choke, partly brought on by the fact of the pressure of the previous teams having choked. It becomes this kind of self-perpetuating, the opposite of a virtuous circle. And if you look back on it, they did actually choke in the World Cup final against France. It's just that the referees bottled awarding France a penalty that would have won the game for them when they won their first World Cup. Since they've got over that, they're now this like free flow, and we'll pass the ball from anywhere, run it in because we're the best and most skillful team. They were always the best and most skillful team. It's just that psychologically they couldn't get out of their own way. And that research that they did ultimately allows the team to have conversations honestly about choking. We might choke in the middle of this. Somebody needs to have a blue head instead of a red head and not panic. And like, I don't know if that level of analysis and self-examination has gone into the repeated pattern of failing at a World Cup quarter-final. Like, you can see Joe Schmidt has certainly done loads of work on, we didn't have enough depth of squad. I'm going to completely have a massive surge of players coming through. I'm going to give Jacob Stockdale the opportunity to play in the Six Nations in a way that, like, you would have had to kind of be around the squad for a bunch of years beforehand. So Schmidt has definitely learned, but I wonder from a psychological perspective, if Schmidt goes, does all the information that he has, does that disappear from Irish rugby, or are they building up this package of information about why we as a country have repeatedly failed at quarterfinals and how we are addressing that, like, brick by brick from the grassroots all the way up, so that it's not a cyclical, entirely dependent on Joe Schmidt and his outlook. It's actually Irish rugby has fixed the problem of being obsessed with quarterfinals and semi-finals of the World Cup.
Well, yeah, it's true. Like the obsession kind of needs to be there for the success to come, for that barrier to be broken down.
But if you're obsessed with the quarterfinals,
it's going to be a short-term
and
gain.
then, or the country goes mad, and then we get beaten in the semi-final, like, oh, geez, maybe we should have been obsessed with the semi-final. Whereas actually, really, what we should be talking, like, or thinking about is, this game is the same as every other game, but ultimately we need to not be obsessed about this to the point of it's an achievement to win a World Cup quarter-final. While it is an achievement, you then need to make sure that you're slingshotted into winning a semi-final and competing in a final.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think at this point, if Joe Schmidt goes, it doesn't take everything with him. I think it's kind of rippled down enough, and you look at some of the structures that are going on and the really good things that are happening at Leinster, for example. I'm not saying that's the Joe Schmidt effect, but there does seem to be enough of a rugby IQ spread out around different factions in Irish rugby at the moment. Who knows how the Munster project will go this year, but it seems that there may be a varying kind of degree of success down there as well. Certainly a different style. When you look at, say, Leinster and you look at Ireland, there are a lot of things that, say, Stuart Lancaster and Joe Schmidt probably agree on, and certainly Lancaster and Andy Farrell. There's kind of a similar school of thought there. So I think that they'll have learned a lot from Joe Schmidt. I think that a lot of the Joe Schmidt effect will have been so deeply ingrained in Irish rugby culture now that when he goes, it will be a loss because he's Joe Schmidt. But it's not going to be too much of a loss, to the point where we don't have this lingering regret about not utilising Joe Schmidt a little bit more in terms of as a resource that can lead to a legacy of excellence. I think that legacy of excellence is going to happen regardless.